One of the remarkable things about the Bible is that we actually have a historical record of people who lived so long ago. I mean, if you think about it, in so many parts of the world, who knew anybody who was living 2,800 years ago? And yet with the book of Amos, we know that Amos lived during the reign of Jeroboam II, which was from 786 to 746 BC. And it was a time in the northern kingdom of Israel when they thought they had everything going. It was a time of prosperity, of territorial expansion. It was really the height of their power, and the military might and security that they enjoyed, the economic affluence that they had. The people, frankly, thought, we've got it made. Clearly, God is looking out for us because look at how wonderful everything is. And into this time of prosperity comes this sheep herder from Judah. He wasn't even from Israel. Amos has to go to the northern kingdom and tell them in the midst of all this some very harsh, difficult words. And he denounced Israel. First of all, he denounced all their neighbors for their reliance upon military might, for the grave injustice that took place and their social dealings, their abhorrent immorality, and their shallow, meaningless piety. And needless to say, Amos had a hard job. And the book of Amos begins with our verse of the day, chapter 1, verse 1. The words of Amos, who was among the shepherds of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of King Uzziah of Judah, and in the days of King Jeroboam, son of Joash of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. Here in this one little verse, we get so many of these details, that Amos is just a shepherd, nothing more. He's not part of the religious elite. He's not a priest. He's just a shepherd. And did you notice it's the words not that he heard, but the words of Amos which he saw concerning Israel. And isn't that interesting? It is to me anyway. We all usually think about words that we hear, but for Amos it's words that he saw, that God in some ways gives him a vision and communicates to him what needs to be shared. And we also learn that it's the time of King Uzziah, which tells us that Amos was prophesying at the same time as Isaiah. You may recall in Isaiah chapter 6 that it was in the year that King Uzziah died that Isaiah had his remarkable experience and encounter with the Lord in the temple in Isaiah chapter 6. So it's in this same period. And then the final thing I would note, not only are the rulers mentioned, so we know Uzziah and Judah and Jeroboam, and you can read about Jeroboam in 2 Kings chapter 14, verses 23 through 29. And the final thing that's mentioned is it was 2 years before the earthquake. And just like in the future, we'll talk about, well, that was 5 years after the pandemic. Or we remember the blizzard of 78. That here in this first verse of Amos, we get our prophet. We learn his role, his task. We hear about the political people who are in place and a significant event that people remembered. And this all sets the context for the book that will follow.